Hello, everybody. It's Andy here from Glass Half Dead, and you're listening to the Vantage Point podcast, a Kill Team podcast that occasionally I do. Anyway, today I am joined by Matt. Hello, Matt. How are you?
Good. Happy to be here.
Excellent. Matt, some people might be not aware of who you are. Who are you? Why have I brought you onto the Vantage Point podcast?
All right. Yeah, I'm Matt Wilhelm. I've been a Kill Team player for a year. And a couple weekends ago, I had a pretty big showing at the Tacoma Open. I was able to come in first in a very challenging field of almost, I believe, we were 63 competitors. And I got to earn myself a golden ticket right here. So later this year, I will be at Atlanta for the Warhammer World Championships of Warhammer for the major Kill Team tournament. I can show off the trophy.
Please do.
As well here. This is nice 20 pounds of iron. A lot of welding on the back. Not quite the right size for a dice tray, but I brought it with me to my first post Tacoma Open game.
Oh, just to flex on people. But the real question people are going to be wondering is, what on earth does 20 pounds mean? I've got no clue.
Oh, there we go. I believe that would be...
We'd have to go to the conversion calculator online, I'm sure.
Yeah, I want to guess 14 off the top of my head. 14.
Okay. 14 kg. That's heavy. Damn. Okay.
Yeah.
All right,
it's gonna tear your drywall out.
Sure. Now, something that we're really going to be focusing on here is obviously how you did at Tacoma Open. We are going to just have a little chat about the GT, hosted by GW, so it's always interesting to see what they do compared to what the fans do. But also, we're going to have a little bit of a faction focus on the team that you won with, which was, of course, Intercession. So, before we dive onto that and why you chose them, how you played them, how you managed to come first in, as you say, 63 players, which is really great. Let's start talking about just the GT, the GW tournament experience, if you don't mind. Do you have anything that really stood out about the Tacoma GT? And just for people's reference, I have notes here, and all I wrote for this bullet point was Tacoma GT vibe check. So
great.
Yeah.
I think there's a couple ways to answer that. Talk about the admin of the tournament, how GW ran it, and then the people that showed up as well. Why don't we start with the admin, for everybody, just because it gives a little bit more context. So yeah, 63 players, 2 days, 3 days each round. There was possibly going to be a shadow round if it had gone past 64 players, because you don't have to arrive at a winner. 64, you need a 7-round bracket. Thankfully, that didn't happen. I think that's a little brutal. I know that for the big Warhammer tournament, there was a shadow round, and it went to midnight. So it was pat on the back to everyone who stood up for that. That thing ended up being a 9-round tournament over 3 days, just wild. Structure of the tournament: 6 rounds every day. It went loot, secure, capture. I think that's right. The last mission of the day, no actions, just sitting on it at the end of the round. So it's kind of a heavy actions, medium actions, no mission actions. Kept it easy to do the same rotation each day.
Right.
Map-wise, they also did something, I think a few things that kept it really easy and manageable. Because there was only one TO, there was only one judge running it. You did a great job. And that was everything was Octarius.
Okay.
Everything was the straight out of the box Octarius set. Nothing added, nothing subtracted. And we only did
terrain is the next bullet point. So let's leave that for a moment, because obviously terrain is such a big thing that's like its own thing. Cool. Yeah. So
yeah, there's a lot to talk there. Okay. 64 players as far as matching went. There were no Swiss rounds. It was relatively BCP putting undefeated players against each other. I think there was a little confusion about how it matched people within that bracket, because I could tell when I got to the top 8, it wasn't 8th seed fought 1st seed, 7th seed fought 2nd seed. It was a little more randomized, and then it kept all of the top tables close together. So as we finished, the tables to watch, became the front row, and then the half of the front row, and then just the front matching table, etc. The competitive field was great. I'm in Seattle, Washington, on the west coast of the U.S. I'd say there's a pretty big kill team scene here. I'm part of Waystone Wargaming Speakeasy, which maybe we'll talk more about later, but I'll give the plug now. Amazing place to play Warhammer. Stefan and Dustin founded this last year. Folks might have seen a Kickstarter, but it is a private social club for wargaming. 90%. Warhammer, Horus Heresy, and Kill Team. Small place, like 5 tables, a bar, just like great atmosphere, great vibe. It's in a great neighborhood in Seattle, like really a prime real estate area. So I think it's pretty unique in the world as a place to play Warhammer. And I'll just throw it out there: best place in the world to play and chat and hang out with all your fellow Warhammerers.
No one can deny it. So that was Seattle. What was the name again?
Waystone Wargaming Speakeasy.
Well, there you go. If you're in Seattle, that's the place to be.
Yeah. I didn't have a jersey for this last tournament, but yeah, going into December, I'm going to wear his jersey and represent the hometown colors.
Sweet. Now, quick question for those of us that have no idea about American geography: where is Seattle compared to Tacoma?
Seattle and Tacoma are almost like sister cities. We share, like, the airport is Seattle Tacoma Airport.
Oh, okay.
It's 45-minute drive.
So this was local for you
there. This is relatively local.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I did an Airbnb for the night because I didn't want to drive back and forth.
Sure. Okay. And awesome. So did you go specifically because it was local? Do you go to these regularly? Was this like your first big tournament?
Yeah, it was definitely my first big tournament. I've played in 4 tournaments that ranged from like a dozen to 26 people before this.
Okay.
At Waystone and at Terra Crux Gaming. So I'd say the other big community around Washington to mention is KTC, which is the Cascadia Kill Team community, or Kill Team Cascadia. They run a lot of events, more so in Tacoma, Portland, and further south into Oregon. But a huge community there. They also showed up as the Cats, the Cascadia area tournament scene. I think that's to parody the Bats, the Bay Area tournament scene.
Yeah. The Bats and the Cats.
So this made up a lot of the competitors in Tacoma. A lot of some of these folks I played with against, or at least heard about them. Obviously, there's sponsored discords here for each of these groups.
Okay, fair enough. Now, can you talk? I think I interrupted you a little bit about the field. Like what sort of matchups, that sort of thing did you have to go into? Or were there, even if you didn't have to face them?
So, I think when I first got there, I was asking some of the other folks in these communities, like, hey, are there any killers here? Did anyone fly in? And I know there were plenty of people who came in. Someone came in from Germany. Someone came in from Toronto.
Cool.
I don't know if we had, the celebrities of the Kill Team circuit there. Maybe I'll attribute my win to maybe not being no one was hunting the gold ticket there abroad. I know we didn't have.
Everyone's hunting the gold tickets. Like people want them. People go out there just to get the goldens. Yeah. Now, it's hot. Yeah.
So as far as the field goes, but there were plenty of very competitive players. I'll throw a name out there, Brendan Bean, who is regularly a blooded player, now has switched over to Cults. Plays a lot in all these local tournaments. Most of these local tournaments that we've talked about. He was either administering one of those tournaments, or it became us in the final round of the tournament. So we've had a lot of very tense games before. So he was big competition. And I did get to play him in the tournament. I'm sure we'll talk about all my rounds later on.
But obviously, his main downfall was that he meta chased. He's a slave to the meta, and so you beat him purely through moral superiority, right?
An unrepentant devotee of the Chaos Gods.
Outrageous.
That's how the hubris has to get back to you.
Sure. What was the field looking like, though? Were there a million Intercession and Legionary players? Was everyone running Cults? Was it, as you say, a Shark Tank? Like, what was the vibe?
There were 3 Cults players, including Mr. Bean. So I was definitely fear of Cults. There were other great players playing Novitiates. The top field, of course, had Hand of the Archon, a few other Intercessors teams. There was one Felgor team I didn't face. I've played now again against them after the tournament because I wanted that experience. There were several Harlequins. It felt pretty balanced. It didn't feel like the meta chase was there. I think there was definitely one well-placing Inquisition team. Maybe there was someone else further down the list. You've probably talked about it before, but the availability of some of those teams has been very limited. And so even though they might be the hotness,
got to get them. Yeah.
It's probably making them underrepresented.
Sure. So before we dive into the Intercession and your specific matchups, let's have a quick chat about the terrain. So here's a question, because was shown two different setups, but somebody said there was only one setup. How many setups were there?
There were two.
Okay, right. That's what I thought. Yeah.
So I mentioned before, yeah, all Actaris, nothing added, nothing subtracted. And I think it was a really good call on the TO's part. There was a setup for nacho deployments and a setup for hot dog deployments, and there were no hamburger deployments. And those were by table. So every table was set up one way or the other.
Cool.
And so as you moved around between matches, you could play on a hot dog or a hamburger. But that did mean like in a round, everyone was playing loot. But there were two different types of board setups.
Right.
They were using all the different objective setups, but none of the like I said, no hamburgers. So
okay.
But then terrain-wise, there were only 3 setups. But I'm pretty sure they were using the different objective layouts within those terrain setups.
Oh, cool. So throughout, however many 30 tables, you'd have in the same round, you would have everyone playing the same mission, loot, whatever. But then scattered throughout, everybody would be playing on whatever the available official CritOps maps packs are for those different deployments. Cool. Okay, that sounds good. Now, when it comes to terrain and Octarius, one of the big things that kind of differs between the official tournaments is doors. Fans tend to say if you're not playing doors, you're not playing Kill Team, right? GW says doors, they're not part of the kill zone. And this is a GW tournament, but I believe you play doors, right?
Doors and hatches were openable. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it definitely changes games, right? You could run each of those games one way or the other, and it's going to change setups. It's going to change, strength during the game, like preference of even taking attacker defender, so you can pick that side of the table.
Sure. Did you have... So, well, I suppose I'll say my bit first. I thought that from last year... the terrain setups this year looked, if I'm honest, pretty solid. Like, I think a year and a half ago, whatever, there was the first US GW run tournament, and the terrain was pretty shocking. Which is fair, like it's a new season, it's a new edition, nobody knows what's happening. But using exactly the same terrain, I thought actually that the layouts I saw were pretty good. What did you think about them?
Yeah, I thought they were strong. I think it was a really good idea to really only have the 2 layouts, right?
Yeah.
Because one designer can make two fair layouts. So just one more bit about the terrain, because this has come up in a lot of my games, and now I'll always try to play it this way. Octarius, you have your oil derrick, and there's that little pipe that hangs off the edge. That pipe was insignificant, and so was the part, like the half pipe under the oil derrick. And if you could fit a model through there, which I think is only 25s, you were allowed to move there in the game. So that's a standard way to play Octarius. I mean, I think everyone who went for that tournament felt pretty good about it. I know games will play sense. Everyone's going to apply those rules.
For sure.
On the terrain setups, I think folks can find the images, or maybe you'll be able to share them in the chat. You always had one piece of heavy that was accessible, like right in front of your deployment zone or inside your deployment zone, and at least 2 pieces in the center. One piece of the heavy, sounds really great, like, oh, it's safe. But, big teams or even Intercession, that means if you're trying to stay safe from Vantage and you're, an obscuring, the question marks on obscuring, we'll get into that in a sec, you can really only stay behind there. And so it did take some risk taking. And I guess I'll answer that question mark about obscuring right away. Like, we were playing all the right obscuring rules, but, plenty of teams have ways to ignore it. I played twice against Phobos. I myself was running the Auspex on my Intercession team every game, so I could ignore it where I needed to. And so, obscuring isn't, depending on the matchup, you go into a game, you'll know, like, oh, is obscuring totally safe, or like, do I need to, pay attention to that? Or, some teams like Phobos, they're just flat out ignoring it.
Yeah, sure. Okay, fair enough. That was pretty much all I had for terrain, because, I mean, normally it's something to dwell on and complain about for ages, but I thought they were pretty good, to be honest. So not much to complain about.
It's interesting, and after, especially as you keep playing on the same setups after, a few games, you realize where the interesting choke points are. Like, oh, here there's a piece of scramble really close to the heavy. Like, charging there is actually a lot more difficult than it seems, because you can only really scramble charge, which means if you're too far from the scramble field, you can think you're really close to somebody, but you're actually safe from a turn of charging, or they can push their guy back enough from the scramble that, the scramble charge isn't going to work. And so, those once those choke points became like well known, that became interesting. I think everyone was playing. There was usually always a building near the center of the board or in the center of the board. So lots of games with throwing a barricade in front of that door. Like, sometimes both people want it blocked.
Sure.
For because people want to be in control. No one wants to get someone surging through the center, surprising, upsetting their game plan.
For sure. I think that, so obviously Scramble Terrain only turns up in Octarius, but it's a really interesting piece, and it allows you to move in ways people don't really predict. Yeah, you can catch a lot of new players out with Scrambled Terrain and charges, because you could dash before the charge, etc. So it's pretty interesting. Moving on quickly to your experience level and why Intercession. So you said that you've been to a few tournaments already, so it's not like your first tournament, but
No.
if anybody says, which kill team do you start the game with, Intercession is the answer, right?
Yeah, right. I mean, if you're teaching anybody, there's probably 3 good answers, but it's the best answer.
Yeah, well, 3 rules, easy to get. Everyone has the models, etc., etc. So, can you tell us a little bit about your experience level, like how you did in the past tournaments, and why you went with Intercession, maybe?
Sure. Yeah, I'll walk you through a little bit of story, because I actually didn't start with Intercession. I had been painting for a few years, really got heavy into it during COVID, and I was painting orcs and space wolves because it's a great hobby when you're stuck at home. My wife and I were having our first kid at the same time, and so when you don't know, you can't schedule your fun time. Painting with a wet palette, you can start, stop, all on your own time.
That's exactly what I thought you meant when you talked about fun time with a wife. Yep.
So I had those models. At some point, I traded. I had a bunch of Necrons. I realized I was never going to use them. Traded in, got some cash from somebody, and they're like, "Oh, do you want the Pathfinder kill team?" And I'm like, "Sure, that sounds fun." So I built and played that as my first kill team. Kind of the opposite of Intercession in terms of complexity. Yeah. It felt really strong. I mean, I was playing them after their first nerf when it was still 2 CP for a greater good, and you couldn't remove heavy cover with your marker lights, which that would have been ridiculous before. That's it was obviously way too strong. And I really liked the team. I was learning. I was certainly slow. I'd say I have even before. Well, I played Warhammer in high school, but I played Magic the Gathering in high school, and since then just tons of board games. Love board games. Love playing board games competitively. Was playing Settlers of Catan before it was in English. I played. I can just Terraforming Mars had been my jam for a couple of years, and we played with all the expansions, big 4-hour brain drain games. So not unfamiliar with games, even though maybe a less kill team experience.
So all kill team players, you were just balls deep in pussy 24/7. Yeah. We've all been there.
I'm a married man. Cool. I'm a married man.
Oh no, yeah, but then, sure. Keep going, keep going. Ignore my weird comments. Yes.
I started with Pathfinders, brought them to a local tournament, I think of 16, 14 people. You just dominated the first couple rounds. I mean, it's mean what you can do with a recon drone and a grenade and people's ill-placed starting models. Got to the last game against Mr. Brendan Bean, who I mentioned before, and I think my brain was just racked. I'd taken every game way over time. You guys know Pathfinders; they had more models then. That was before the nerf, now the 12. Yeah. So many just interactions, every model being unique, really needing to think things out because you don't want anyone getting charged. Man, I couldn't play well. That game was that last game was just a bomb for me. I couldn't handle the mental load at that point. I was burnt out.
Sure.
So 2 months later, there's another tournament, and we're getting ready. And the Intercession rules come out. I'm like, oh, okay. If I want to play in a tournament again, these seem to be the guys to do it with. I played one practice game just to learn the rules, but wasn't much. Yeah. Then I brought them to the next tournament. Did well. Ended up with Mr. Bean again in the final round, and then he taught me a very hard lesson about non-reciprocal shooting on Into the Dark. But somehow I had a miraculous comeback and pulled that game off by a few victory points with one guy still on the board. And that feels good. And so I brought Intercession to the next few tournaments that I went to, and then eventually to Tacoma, because I think especially in a tournament scene I think it's not controversial. The brain power to play Intercession is way less than the brain power to play those other teams.
Of course,
there's a lot of other things to think about in a tournament scene. You want to, and playing at your best. You're not, even if you play a good team not at their best. I would say a slightly less good team played perfectly is going to be a much stronger competitive play, where you really have to eke out every advantage. And so I've liked Intercession. I mean maybe maybe that's become my play style of like, big pieces. If you're thinking like chess, like everything's a big piece, really easy to set up.
Sure.
If you're going to lose a model, like, it's easy going to be a trade.
Would you rather play with
Overwatch.
12 pawns or 6 queens? And so, well, probably the queens, yeah. Sure.
Yeah. And I mean, they've taken a few nerfs, and I frankly like agree with them. Like the Methodical's earlier incarnation, way too good. Durable was probably too strong to combine with like the fact they all got an extra wound when they became a bespoke team.
Sure.
So Intercession, it's nice and simple. You play the fundamentals of the game. Especially Into the Dark, you have to make like very straightforward strategic decisions of like how much to dedicate to each lane of the combat. Are you going to go even? Like there's 3 lanes, 2-2-2. Or you're going to put one guy in a single lane just to keep the other person honest, and then maybe try to shift it later and not put the pressure on. I was able to think very clearly during those games. I'm not going to say I'm the fastest player in the world, and certainly no one at any of these clubs would say I'm the fastest player. I'm definitely getting faster, but with Intercession, the amount of options you have to evaluate every round is less, and you get to play well. And so I would wonder, in one-off games, Felgor, Pulse, all these other teams, might be better. The statistics, if there were statistics for that, they might show up as better. But you throw people in a tournament environment, game 3 at the end of the day, game 6 at the end of day 2s, I bet you Intercession is overperforming versus the complicated teams.
Sure. So, quick question as you're talking about that there. For the GW tournaments I've gone to, they have been much, much, much more lax about people running over time than some of the FLGS tournaments. How were they with yours? Was it like hour 45, stop, dice down? Or was it like, 2:15? Yeah, it's cool, keep going.
I was in the top tables on day 2, and obviously he was the TO was very interested in making sure we could move ahead at times. I think we might have gone 5 or 10 minutes over in game 5, and then he let us start the other game slowly. But he said there was a strict stop, and then that game we actually have a problem with time. It was Phobos versus Intercessors, so that moved at a good clip.
Okay, fair enough.
But yeah, I think they were somewhat flexible, but no one was going like 30 minutes over the time. I think he was willing to give out the 5-10 minutes. Sure. At least at the top tables, I'll say like you're so in the tournament scene, like I was so focused on those last 2 games, like I didn't really know what was going on anywhere else. Maybe people told me, it probably slipped right out of my mind. I forgot to pick up my mat. I paid for the promo mat. I'm still trying to work out with them. Like, can I just get it sent, or you want to like give me $70 back? Right. It's cool, but like I mean, to talk about how much brain drain there was at the end of the last game, because I think we left it all on the table. We triple checked our scores for uploading them to the BCP app. Right. And we did it wrong. And like he came out as like number 1. We're like, oh wait. The TO's like, wait, I thought that was the other way around. And we're like, oh yeah, oops. Yeah. And then like we looked at it so many times, and like every brain cell was left on that table. And we had a lot of TO support in that game too. That's actually another thing I should mention in one of your earlier questions. Like for the last game, the final game, which was going to decide who got that ticket, the TO was probably with us 40% of that game. And he's like, guys, pre-measure, use a test model when you're trying to put something somewhere. If you have any questions, give it to me. And me and my opponent were like very willing to just be like, yeah, hey, like it's controversial, like you just tell us, can this guy move this far and still see this person, or be protected, shoot this person while being protected from this? And we were just like, don't ask us, like our brains are dead, let TO decide. That's great. That's a great way to play. 100%. If everyone could play with their own personal like rules and like model butler, it'd be like a very enjoyable game. Obviously not really realistic, but that made it a very enjoyable game.
No, I agree. I think one of the things that obviously top table final round is a slightly different vibe, but 100%. If anyone's ever going to a tournament, I say just call the judge. Like for anything, there should be no stigma. You're not accusing your opponent of anything. You're just playing the game, and you're letting somebody else decide, almost like a computer. Just what does the judge say? Awesome.
It's a complicated game.
It is.
No matter what, Kill Team's a complicated game. Like, I'll say in this tournament, it caught me in the first couple games. The rules for doors on Octarius and Into the Dark, not quite the same. I think the rules for Octarius doors are actually a little loose as far as like where you have to be to
pretty
the door.
Yes.
But he gave us an interpretation, and that was fine. Sure. I thought everything was Octarius or Into the Dark. Like, just have a free inch to the side of each door to move from. Like, oh, okay. No, that's not it.
Yeah. Okay, so quickly moving on, because I am, of course, aware of time. So, your overall answer to that really is you decided to go into session because of your own fears about you slow playing and brain drain?
Yeah, I think
Okay.
it was not a meta choice. Maybe when it came to traits, I had to change because I'd always played methodical and durable before, and I
Right.
thought methodical was gonna be bad. So I switched to rapid, which new favorite there.
Oh yeah.
And I'm aware, I'm aware of the scene. I'm obviously aware of all the, all the media outlets talking about how Felgors, are going to come for your children. The
Mm,
cultists are going to take your jobs. The Inquisition is going to report
sure.
you for thought crimes. But I don't know. I really didn't have the bandwidth to learn another team as
Right.
well, especially like knowing. I have played a few games. I've got Hand of the Archon. I've got Phobos. I've got Orcs. I've played a few games with each. Like I don't have the confidence that I do with Intercession, and that's it's a slippery slope, right? Because
Sure.
I have the confidence with Intercession, I keep playing them in competitive events and building my confidence.
So a quick
I'm,
question about that there then. So obviously you're confident with Intercession, and you didn't want to swap to one of the new top meta killer teams, but you did have to play them. Did you find that I personally find that generally, if I'm playing a new faction for the first time, I'm essentially learning that faction, and I'm probably going to lose because I don't know what their gotcha is, right? Did you have to also semi-learn Cults, Felgor, Inquisition, Hand of the Archon, or no, Intercession just
and
barrel through them?
Harlequins. I had never played against Harlequins
Oh, okay.
until the tournament, until round 3 of the tournament. But I've been so afraid of them. There's a
Yeah.
player in my local scene who has them, and I just never matched up together
Right.
playing against each other with his team versus with Harlequins versus Intercession. So yeah, I read the rules, was afraid. But I think Intercession strategies are always pretty simple. Like,
Mm,
what operators are you going to bring to the table? Ended up being a very consistent answer for me
sure.
in that round. And then what do you do best? Oh, you shoot. And you keep your mind clear to focus on victory points. So yeah, very afraid of those teams. A specific game plan against them. No, I didn't have like a flow chart there. I think.
Mm.
I mean, we can run through intercession strategy because we have so few
Yeah.
pieces. Things end up being fairly similar a
Sure.
lot of the
Can
time.
you give like a 5-10 minute intercession team breakdown? Let's say I don't know intercession. What do I take?
All right, you've got 6 models, and you don't have that many choices. You're going to take a sergeant. Now, there's probably 2 setups in most cases you're going to run between, which is you're going to take a power sword and I do the auto bolt rifle, or you're going to take a chain sword and a plasma pistol. One of the other there based on the matchup. You're going to take your gunner. He's the guy with the grenade launcher. You're either going to give him an auto bolt rifle or a stalker, I think. Then you're going to take the grenadier. No choices. And then with your 3 open slots, I'm almost always taking 2. We'll call them like bolt rifle or auto bolt rifle intercession
Mm.
warriors, and 1 assault warrior. In some matchups, I'd see mixing that up. But even if you look at those maps for the tournament, or I think any map, you're going to have some objectives. Let's say you have, there's always an objective on your far right and your far left. And those, you're going to send people out there. They're probably not your strongest models because those are your flex models. They're your most pawn-like models. One of those is probably not going to have great fire lanes. So that's where the assault warrior goes because he gets more damage in close combat. He gets an extra attack. He's a bigger threat in close combat. One of those lanes probably has good shooting available. So yeah, like put that as your warrior lane. And those guys aren't going to get pumped up with equipment. Those guys' job is to score points and force the trade if your opponent's going to be aggressive.
Mm.
So you got 4 models left. What are they doing? The sergeant, I think, is almost always going to the center of the board. He projects so much power, whether it's the plasma pistol or like double shooting twice with an auto bolt rifle, which if you take that, you're probably putting the upgrade on it to make it 4 or 5 damage. So that guy can cleave through models. He's a big threat in melee, regardless. He's a big threat in melee and shooting, with regardless of whatever setup you take. And I don't think I ever want to. He doesn't want to. I don't use him to initiate the trade right in the first round. He's a big threat. He's going to control space. The opponent's going to be afraid of, well, if I charge in there, oh, your sergeant just gets to kill me. So he's going to go in the center, hold back and control space. Your grenadier is probably going up and being your alpha strike, your person to initiate a trade, or throwing a grenade first round. Usually a good idea, regardless of the target. You don't want to say like, oh, I want to save my crack grenade for the best target. Like I won't use it first round. Like no, like you're gonna have a lot of guns. Get a crack off at somebody the first round if you can. Get a frag off. If it's a horde team. And then who's sitting in back of your big shooters? So you're gonna have your gunner. I always give the gunner the Auspex. And you're probably going to have a bolt rifle. Maybe you upgrade to what we call the super bolt rifle, where you put the blessed bolt and the scope upgrade on there, so it's 4/5, lethal 5 up, and P1. At minimum, it's probably just going to be P1 lethal 5 still, which is dangerous to most models in the game. They're your shooters. They're going to sit around your home base, probably on a vantage point. I think every game that a guy with the Auspex is going to have a shot first round, and if he doesn't have a shot, you're at least making your opponent, like, I'm going to use the term respect you. Like, they have to play safe. They can't just throw people wildly out of an objective without, risking getting shot at. And especially, these maps or any maps, those far objectives probably don't have heavy cover, on the point, or at least one of them won't. And you'll be like, well, and since you can get rid of obscuring, you're going to be able to find that open fire lane. And so, yeah, hey, you want to go out there and loot that objective or claim that objective? I'm going to get a shot off at that person. You're probably going to die getting hit with a crack grenade with your rerolls. And even if they want to out-activate you because you only have 6 activations and they have more, they're going to make the shot on Overwatch.
Okay.
And this is why I like the Stalker. Oh, sorry.
No,
so that's why I like
keep
the Stalker
going.
on the Gunner. I like the Stalker on the Gunner, and and that's interesting because you have the Auspex, your main set of actions with that guy is probably move, Auspex, shoot the grenade. Or if he's already on Vantage and he's shooting anyway, you probably don't need to do more than a dash to get your shot off. And so, yeah, take the Stalker because it's free AP.
Okay, sounds good. So to summarize quickly, you got 2 losers that go up the sides. You put one at the assault guy on the one that doesn't have a good fire lane. You put the regular intercessor on the one that does have a good fire lane. Then you've got your gunner who ideally sits back on Vantage, but only if it's obviously appropriate. Maybe you need him to hold your objective. You send your sergeant right up the middle, and he's just dominating in the center in some way, but you're not aggressive with him, at least not turn 1. You're holding back for turn 2. Ideally, from what you say, baiting something, because if you're an intercessor, you could probably survive. That kind of thing.
Yeah, I think that the Grenadier is the tip of the spear in the front there. So if they want to trade with the Grenadier, that's great. That's probably the sergeant who's gonna claim the kill if somebody gets aggressive on your Grenadier. Yeah.
Okay, awesome, great. So moving on, because we've only got like 15 minutes. So that's kind of the breakdown of the Intercession team, and I want to know. But this is going to be a bit of an odd question, maybe, because obviously you've just won and got a golden ticket with them. But in the Intercession team, because it is a beginner team, and therefore probably has quite a few beginner players playing it, is it actually a top tier team?
I was going to say yeah. I think it is. Because even I'd say 2 reasons. One, like in actual play style, we talk about the brain load of a tournament. If you play Intercession, you can get close to playing what I think you could say is like a perfect game.
Okay.
It's hard in Warhammer, right? There's a lot of variables. Even outside of the dice, there's a lot of variables. But you can say like, this is the right strategy. I implemented it correctly. Like you're gonna get near the top output like possibility of playing Intercession. Whereas other teams, yeah, like to get to that top output, it's gonna be really hard. And maybe there's a lot bigger questions to ask. There's so many possibilities of how to play Tau or some of these big teams. With Intercession, you can potentially do it, and you can do it in a tournament environment where the burn is higher. Now, is it the top? Now, if we strip that out, if like let's say we give somebody 4 hours to play a game, we put a judge there, we let them think through everything, phone a friend, play, split the game up and play where you have 2 tables now where you made a different choice at the beginning and the end. If you give someone that much freedom, is Intercession still a top team? Because of the output of double shooting and fighting, I'd say it's still pretty strong.
Sure.
Like every intercessor is a huge threat. Even you get somebody down to 2 health, you put you pop your strat for, hey, I'm not injured, no APL modifiers. He can go and body 2 lesser models. Like one intercessor can just trade through a lot of models if your opponent
doesn't get
your opponent has to set up. They have to set up perfect trades, and it's hard to trade into an intercessor. I've in my own games where I've switched and played a different team and gone against intercessors or legionaries, like initiating that whole role of like, well, I'm going to charge you, lose a guy to get him down to half so that somebody else can charge and make the kill and get trade. Like, it's so hard to, it can be hard to start that when someone plays as cagey as you should in a competitive environment with intercessors. Like, they're just a big block of stats and lethality walking around because of the double shoot, double fight possibilities.
Well, following that up then, do you think they are actually balanced, or are they a little bit OP?
Well, one more point.
Okay.
The other thing that makes Intercession great is the rerolls. That's huge consistency no one else has. And on double shoot, double fight, you're getting the rerolls multiple times. I mean, not to mention what happens if you get rerolls on a grenade. And maybe this sweet trick I'll reach in. If you have to blast yourself with a grenade, you probably have the right reroll aura up that you can use that reroll to when you're resolving it against the intercessor to force reroll one of your hits.
That's very good tip. Very good tip. I like it.
And so, sorry, your last question was,
are they balanced?
Oh, are they balanced? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm balanced against the field. Man, it's so hard to say. Like, I mean, everyone's got opinions on balance. I could give you my whole list sheet of where fixes are due.
Sure.
I mean, who should they balance the game? They should probably balance the game around intercessors.
Well, yes, I agree. But let's say, for example, I suppose balance is such a difficult thing to define, but my current latest concept is that the game has become, and tell me if I'm wrong, like that, I'm pitching you the idea, you tell me, as the number one Tacoma player, I think that as the game has progressed, we've seen more and more rock, paper, scissors design. So I think Intercession are really good. However, there are let's say Kassakin, for example, that will just body you because they just have the AP. You could just fail, I think famously in my head, sorry, I was playing Grey Knights back when it was Compendium, and I lost to Scions, which makes sense, but I didn't fail a single armor save, but he still tabled me because he just had the AP to chew through me. I still made all my saves, but he wrecked me.
That's probably a scenario we can say.
Yeah.
So that's probably a scenario we can say, like, balance is wrong if your rolls are great and you just get bodied and you don't even see the route to victory.
Sure. So what do you think about that? Like, how do you feel Intercession play in this concept that I've just thrown your way with zero time to think of the rock, paper, scissors design?
It feels to me like Intercession is the most vanilla. It's the not rock, paper, scissors. I mean, maybe that's why they're underbalanced. But when it comes to missions, other teams have missions they're strong and weak on. Like, I got to fight Phobos on Secure, where you have to hold it at the end of the round. So, like, their extra action, their free action, like, not being used. Or fighting cults on loot, where they're like, but I have to leave people back, and you can't even mutate them that far because it gets harder and harder to tap the objective. Like, that's... Intercession feel very balanced across all three objectives. Are they a rock, paper, scissors? I mean, I haven't got. I'll play against Karsten sometime now to warm up, especially for the Road Trip Cup, and I'll let you know if I feel if they're the can opener for the Intercession can. But I do feel like Intercession is one key tool there that other elite armies don't have: fire on death. I mean, maybe they can kill you with a non-reciprocal shot.
Sure.
But okay, if you kill me, that plasma gunner is going down with me.
Sure. So quick question, I suppose. If you were to play another team, which would it be?
And I have. Let's say Intercession get nerfed to the ground tomorrow.
Yeah, sure. Intercession's
gone.
They
go to 10 wounds.
Yeah.
They go to 10 wounds. They lose double shots.
Yeah.
The reroll thing changes. I'm no longer confident that they're a reasonable team to bring to Worlds.
Yeah.
I'll probably play Legionary because it's the closest, with maybe Phobos as a side. Or if they introduce a Terminator team where I only have to think about 5 models.
You're there. Right.
There we go.
So, obviously the teams you've just picked, those all elite. Is that just because you purely think about, I want to be fast, or and brain drain, or is it like, you know what? I just kind of like the theme.
I think I like the play style, keeping my mind clear. That's where it is. I mean, I'll keep trying to play some more practice games with my hand. Orcs are really strong right now, so maybe give them a second look. I love the Tau, but I just don't think I can pull. I don't think I can play my best in a tournament, in a competitive environment with those teams.
Yes, they've become a very fragile team that really show a lot of skill if you can get those wins with them. That's for sure. With those latest nerfs, yeah, that's for sure. quickly, you did play with them, and you have briefly touched on them. But what did you feel about the latest nerfs to Intercession? Like, I mean, you've even said you decided to not run methodical, was it? Or you didn't run
Yeah.
durable?
I've been so until this tournament, I always run durable and methodical.
Right.
Methodical was way too good. It did too many things.
Sure.
It got rid of the Overwatch penalty. It got rid of the injury penalty, and it got rid of the penalties from other effects. Like cults have a way to reduce your weapon skill in close combat. So yeah, all three things was really strong, and the fact that it basically made every time you do your Wrath of Vengeance the ploy to get revenge shooting on somebody when you go down. Good. Like, well, that's always going to be making that always at full BS. Like, oh, methodical was too good. It covered too many bases. Yeah. Now it just does Overwatch. In open, I don't even know if that's enough. Like, there were very few shots in the competitive games where like I have very few Overwatch shots to begin with. And the people play smart, right? No one's handing that out for free.
Sure.
And it's only going to catch 3s and 4s. You're probably getting a reroll anyway. Like, will it make a difference in the game? There's a lot of questions to ask over something that you only get to pick 2. Like, you should pick something that's much more reliable. So. Should they get nerfed? Yeah, that should have gotten nerfed. Should they get nerfed more? If they take a wound off of each of them, I'm not going to abandon ship right away.
Yeah, okay, that's fair. Fair enough. But to your playstyle, so the only thing that changed is you no longer take methodical, you swap to rapid and durable.
Mm-hmm.
And was it rapid and durable in every match?
Yeah, I never changed it.
Because they're the best. Yeah, why would you?
Well, I also think, I'm going to keep rapid all the time. Like, I like scoring victory points and getting shots that I wouldn't get otherwise. Durable, I could see giving up, but category-wise, there's nothing else. You're not going to pay the point. There's nothing else in that category that's not great. No. So if durable is potentially on the chopping block going forward. Like, people I hear a lot of good talk on deadly shots, which is convert some of your damage on crits into mortal wounds. That seems more accurate, which is bolt weapon crits going to get no cover and deny the retained cover save. Those seem good, but it seems my big thought on that is those might push you over the threshold in like 5-10% of cases from shooting at somebody versus shooting on injuring somebody, or doing a lot of damage versus getting a kill, which is obviously the really big threshold to get over. Sure. But being alive, durable on 1 or 2 wounds presents much more of a threat to your opponent.
For sure.
I definitely have models on 1 or 2 wounds do heroic things in the game.
Yeah. Or
at least keep the opponent on it. Like, this can't be super aggressive. Maybe, it's going to die anyway, but that's going to burn up 2 of the actions from, if they get initiative, it's going to burn up their first 2 actions, and it's going to let you position your other models better. So, great.
Sweet. Okay. We've only got 5 minutes. So, here's kind of, how many have I put? 4 questions. Okay. So, what do you think is the moment that almost lost you the tournament? You had to pick one.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I talked about smart things and keeping your mind clear. So there was a time I didn't do it. Right. The end of round 5. Round 5 was against Hand of the Archon. This was the only game I have that went long. And this is a position I've been in with other tournaments before, and I think I've done poorly, which is why I keep trying to talk about keeping your mind clear. And let's save the last minute to talk about how to solve that problem too when you're in the tournament, because I think that's interesting. So round 5, last couple actions, it's relatively down to the wire. Very few models on the table. I get the last action of the game with somebody, and I just overthink. Even I've got like 6 people around me watching, and I tell everybody, like, I just need to think about victory points. Like, I don't need to get kills. Like, let me just think about victory points. And then I moved somebody off of an objective for like a nebulous reason. And his last activation was to go take that objective. So swing 2 points against me.
Okay.
And like, from in unforced error, right? No reason to do that. Like, pass was the best move.
Right.
And pass should be the best move. Everyone should know sometimes the best answer is like, do nothing, stay where you are. You're projecting threat. Like, don't confuse action with results. Sure. So I did something stupid in front of a lot of people. Swung 2 points the other way, right? Because I lost 1, he gained 1. I still won by 1 point. Like, man, would that have felt dumb to have lost my shot at the top table in that. So that saved by the skin of my teeth. No reason. Like, to take a shot at somebody that was pointless.
Excellent. I love the phrase, don't confuse action with results. If I was doing a hot Alpha Bro podcast cut, that's how we'd start. Don't confuse action with results. I love it. Okay. Yeah. Right. Now, what would you say is the one moment that won you the tournament?
One moment that won me the tournament. Oh
I
man, when I
know.
picked Intercession. I don't know.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
I did have a crazy roll with like dozens of or a dozen people watching. Maybe on my last activation, I got to re-roll a dice to search for that critical save that kept a model at 2 wounds alive, so we could go kill their leader. And it was a net swing of 3 points, which would have been huge, but like the margin of victory was beyond 3. So it would have looked like a close game, and then it looked like a faraway game because I got to do the Emperor Protects and roll a 6 with my last CP.
Brilliant. So you lose a game, or you would have lost a game because of your actions, but you don't lose a game because of dice. Yeah. Okay. Fair enough.
Well, but yeah. Maybe what won me that game, that last game against Phobos. I won the roll off, and I picked sides because I play Phobos. I say I have a Phobos team, and I looked at the table, and I've seen this table before. I'm like, one of these tables is going to be way too good for Phobos shooting. Like, I need to pick the other side. And we're already playing capture, or secure. Hold it at the end of the round is the mission. So that's already like not in Phobos' favor. And then I got to give him the bad side of the board. And so like I think for him it had to be a very uphill battle. That game, because he was a good, strong player. But I think those two things, locking those things in the beginning, recognizing that the side was more important than initiative, that might have been the tournament winner in the final round.
Oh, we clearly should have asked that in the terrain bit. But do you think it was actually the board was unbalanced, or it was fine? It was within tolerance.
I mean, the board is within tolerance, but when you can ignore obscuring, I mean, I don't think they should design boards to be totally safe for people who ignore obscuring. We're just gonna put up big flat pizza plate walls everywhere. Yeah. But when you look at them, what I did was I picked the side of the board where he couldn't just go throw a Reaver with the jetpack or the speed Reavers off onto both flanks and claim like extra objectives without leaving that guy open to being shot. And also it made it I like one safer position with my own side to advance under the course of cover. I mean, when we talk about, man, we can't really get into it. But which way you place that piece of, that L-shaped piece of terrain that has a door, on this, whether that's in the center and the door, like the hidden part of it is on your side or the opponent's side, is really good who gets initiative. Like, because I think you want to be inside the box where the door is on their side of the board, so you can get deeper into their zone, stay protected, and have a surge point. And if they want to come into your zone, they have to, wave hello. A few inches earlier because they're doing it on their own side.
For sure, makes sense. Okay, what would you say if you had your group of kill team acolytes around you? What is the biggest takeaway from whatever you did in that tournament for a new player? What would you give them? One piece of advice?
I bodied a new player, a teenager.
That's how to do it. I'm familiar.
So it's like, he ate a lot of frag grenades in a very few amount of rounds. You've got to, if you're going to any game, you're playing a bunch of competitive people. If you're new, don't expect to take top tier. Try to learn as much as you can. I'll say the most frustrating thing in any game, especially when you go into competitive attitude, is you lose and you lose so badly. Oh man, I don't even know what I could have done. This game was rigged against me. That feels bad. So keep your mind open, focus on building you're probably going to play other games, right? And so find people to play those games against, enjoy the community, enjoy the discussion. It's so rare you get to go to a place and talk, this, relatively, narrow hobby. But you can all of a sudden there's hundreds of people there and now you can talk it all day. So yeah, I mean, I got bodied really badly in my first few games. I think a Fragstorm cannon ate a third of my Pathfinders in round 1 of my first game. That didn't deter me. The guy had told me to space out. I just really didn't know how to do it.
Sure.
I learned a lesson. You're always learning a lesson when you lose. When you win, it's harder. It can be harder to find where the lesson was. When you lose, then the lesson's usually really clear. So make sure you're doing that and But if you're going to play against somebody and it's a really uneven match, I know this, I play board games with all sorts of people, and if there's games I'm really good at playing against my wife, I find a way to give her a handicap, victory points, extra resources at the start, change the win condition. That keeps the game, that keeps the game fair and then still learning. Because the goal is to get to a point where you can play a competitive game.
Sure.
Also, if you're learning, you don't need to finish every game, right? And this is general board game advice. If you're trying to learn a game, your goal isn't to finish a game beginning to end. It's to enjoy the game enough that you want to play again. There's some great people at Waystone who are teaching just handfuls of folks every week how to play Kill Team, and big props to them because that's really that's like the biggest step in building a community is, right? There's somebody there giving people that intro.
So if you're a new player, learn to love losing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
or ask for that handicap, right? Like, who's so competitive they want to body some new player by like 10 points in a casual game?
I want to.
All right.
Okay.
Also, and obviously strip out CP or most ploys and
Sure.
strip out secondaries. Simplify objectives. You don't need to play the real game. You need to like get somebody enjoying the fundamentals.
For sure. And so now your final question, your biggest takeaway for pro players.
Okay, cool. And this gets back to the last point that I wanted to make too.
Great.
I had done some competitions in high school, like your standard cerebral competitions. And one of the things we learned was like some exercises for how to take like a break between games or between sessions and like reset your mind, right? And it's just as applicable to Warhammer, right? You play these big brain burner games, you might only get a few minutes between the next game, like even eating lunch sometimes isn't enough of a reset. You're going into a competitive environment. It's all about what's going on up here, right? And so you need to like make sure this is working. Make sure your brain is working. Keep the tool operational. So, maybe don't, stay out till 4 a.m. drinking before. Save it for afterwards as much as you can. It can be hard because, it's a big community and there's a lot going on. But, have one less drink. Eat a few more salads. Drink a lot of water. Try to get the best sleep you can. But also between games, find a reset. So, after my round 5, I went and I laid on the floor in some corner of the convention center where outside of the big room for like 10 minutes. Did some like really light exercises, did like these like just like mental like moving your limbs at different times because that was like this reset practice that I learned in high school. And I took that 10 minutes and I walked back in and like, okay, my head's not buzzing anymore. Like I'm thinking clear, like this is it. Like I'm starting fresh. Like anyone who doesn't do that, like who goes into their next game like super, I can barely think. Like I can't even move my models anymore. That's a huge disadvantage, regardless of, an OP team or, a favorable map setup. So, know that that's the biggest challenge to overcome and try to solve that, right? And you're not going to solve that one looking up strategies on the meta or, like, if I broke from game 5 and talked, like, let me just talk to everyone here, coach me on game 6, give me your strategies, like, that's just going to be pure brain overload. I'm not going to be able to take advantage of anything. They tell me, like, you need to, like, try to just build your, get your mental state, get at 100 mental health, health points, get your shields up, grab the health packs and go in at your best.
So pro players, hydrate and get zen.
There we go.
Awesome. Okay. Well, that is, you need to leave. So with that in mind, did you have any final words?
Kill Team, I've had a great ride playing Kill Team. Just big shout outs to KTC, big shout outs to Waystone. All the groups there. This tournament was a great way to meet people. Still met some new people. Talk to found some like weird small world connections from the tournament. So it's a rare opportunity to be able to do something like that, especially when you're a working parent. Really appreciate that my wife, by the way, gave me the clear weekend. Let's get that last tag in there.
The real champions of Kill Team there.
Yeah. You can't do it without that support.
Definitely.
And so I had such a fun time that weekend. Like big thanks to everyone there. Big thanks to GW for organizing it. Perfectly run tournament. Like just they did an excellent job running it. Very appreciative. Very excited to see what's coming up in December. I'm gonna be practicing hard. Want to definitely represent the Pacific Northwest on the big stage.
Yeah, I'm excited to see. It's always one of the most exciting times, right? When the big golden ticket winners, see what people are taking. Really hyped for it. Anyway, Matt, I'm cognizant that you've got to go, so thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for chatting about Intercession, and obviously thank you to everybody for watching or listening to this, whatever you're doing. I'm Glass Half Dead. This has been Matt. Thank you for watching. Have a good one. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.